welcome to my sewing room. Oh, we have some really interesting things for you today. The theme of the show is paper piecing and patchwork, and of course we have some easy techniques. Now, just to give you a little preview of what's going to happen in the show, I have my beautiful doll dressed in a silk dupioni dress, and if you can look real carefully, she has a little patchwork vest on. Patchwork is certainly not limited to doll clothes on this show today. We have a beautiful vest with all kinds of pretty pastels. Looks very Victorian, although it really isn't at all. Now this is an adorable little child's jumper with a Noah's Ark that has been pieced together, and something I think is really cute too. Rather than trying to piece together little animals, you know, they went 2 by 2, we've just used little ceramic buttons for the animals. But isn't that a cute patchwork? Now, this little heart is so adorable on this jacket. The jacket has hearts woven into it. And what I wanted to share with you, see this little heart on the pocket? That's what we're going to learn to do in just a minute, and that's one of your patterns that will be coming with this show. Here is the little heart done again, this time teeny tiny and on the sleeves of this good-looking little jacket. I think that jacket will be one that your children or your grandchildren would really like to have to wear back to school this fall. And now then, if you'll come over to the boards with me, I'm going to share with you how easy it is to make that beautiful little piecework heart. This little patchwork heart is so much fun and so easy to do. And you see we've used it here to embellish the pockets of the jacket. And then there's a teeny-tiny little patchwork heart exactly like that that has embellished the cuffs of the jacket. Okay, how do you do this? Well, it's really easy. First of all, for patchwork and this particular pattern, I'm going to cut just squares. It says cut 2 of white, 2 of red, 2 of red, whatever. Then this is the design that actually shows how the A, B, C, D, E, F pieces are put together. Then over here shows how the smaller ones are cut out and put together. That's the teeny baby heart right there. Okay, come on over here, step by step, let's make this patchwork. First of all, I have the CD piece. I had 1 of white and 1 of red. In other words, 2 squares. Let me hold this one up so you can see it too. There was a red square and a white square. I placed them right down on each other, and I stitch on the line in the middle, and watch how easy this is. Let me slip the little stick in there so you can see. After I stitch, I fold it over, and voila, there is my first square. Now, what do I do with all this excess fabric under here? It's very easy. You come in and cut it all away, press your seam, and there is my first square. Very easy to do this way. Then the next piece, this says A, B, and B. So I put the 2 white squares on the red piece. I'm going to stitch along the line that separates it, fold it back, stitch along the line that separates it, and fold it back. And you already know what I'm going to do with the excess fabric behind it. That's right. I'm going to cut it away, and then look what happens. After it's all cut away and pressed, there is a second piece to my heart. Now then, put them together and it makes a half of a heart. All right, here is my first square I made. Here is the second square I made. All right, come in here, stitch it at the halfway point, trim it away. Well, you don't have to trim this actually because it's already trimmed for you. And there is half of a heart. Then coming on over on the other side, I make another half of heart just like that, and then I fold one on the other and stitch them together. There's a whole heart, and then I have simply put my pieces of sashing around the heart. And to make the smaller ones, I do exactly the same thing, except I make it in miniature. Now then, I'm going to get some more technique boards and share with you another easy technique. Paper piecing is such an interesting technique, and really it is very easy. This adorable little girl's jumper has the cutest paper piecing on the skirt. It really looks like pockets, although it isn't. But isn't that adorable? And I think my little granddaughters would really like to have a little jumper like this. Okay, don't be afraid of paper piecing because it is not difficult. Let's see how to do it. First of all, you have to draw your design on a piece of some kind of pull-away stabilizer or tissue paper, whatever will work. Actually, this is a good one. It's a little bit thicker than tissue paper. And the design is drawn. This is your pattern on the wrong side of this paper. Now, I want you to notice another thing. It is numbered in the order that you're going to sew your pieces on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. Now that is the order that you're going to sew your pieces. By the way, some people call this organized crazy patch, which I think is a pretty good name also. Now then, I'm going to turn the paper pattern over. Now see, I can see through it. That was the pattern that I drew there, and I'm going to put it down and work from the back. Now, with my fabric pieces, I'm going to put them right sides together. Okay, let me go underneath here. Do you remember we had a 1 there? Okay, we're going to put the first piece right side up, down on that 1. Then we've got to have our next piece right sides together. So I have 2 pieces together, and then I'm going to turn this whole thing over, go to the sewing machine, and from the right side, from this side of the pattern, I'm going to stitch between 1 and 2. Just simply stitch between 1 and 2. Then I come back and I'll open it up and see that's the first part of my paper piecing. Now then, let's go on over to the next one. Okay, I've got to, well, I guess this is just, wait a minute, let's don't go to the next one. Let's just illustrate this, that it's opened up, and then we're going to come in here and trim away. All right, now working still on the one where the numbers are mirror imaged, I've got to do that piece number 1, piece number 2, piece number 3. All right sides together, get this ready. Then what am I going to do before I sew it? Turn it to the other side, and I will stitch between the line that says 2 and 3. Okay, come back, open it up, and there is another piece of my patchwork, my paper piecing patchwork. Then I will go down here on this end, place the pieces, go to this side and sew, come back, open it up, go over here, place the pieces, right sides to right sides, go to the back and sew it where you can look at it, and there it is. Then the last part of this pattern is to put the strips on. Then this is what the final piece looks like, and the little pocket is a leaf that you just kind of squish up. I have asked my dear friend Louise Baird to come and demonstrate this for you. And so Louise, I'm so glad you could come today, and welcome to the show.
Thank you, Martha. Glad to be here. And paper piecing is really fun, and you can really do some intricate patterns with the paper piecing. First of all, just to reiterate with what Martha said, you trace your pattern onto the paper and number all your pieces. You can then start out with your fabrics. Now, I like to stiffen my fabrics so that they're easier to work with and handle. And you place the first one, which is the center of the flower, on top, and then the next color is here. Now, you will need to pick this up to make sure that both of the pieces will be covered when you stitch between lines 1 and 2. Okay, so I've got these right now ready to stitch, and I make sure that I start stitching on the line, and then the right on the line, and sometimes I'll take a back stitch also, and might help to maintain that stitch. Stop right at the line. Now when you pull it out, you want to first trim 1/4 of an inch. I'm going to take this out and flip it over. You can either finger press it or use an iron. Most of the time I'll have an iron set up right by my machine so that I can do that each time. Although if you spray starch your fabrics relatively stiff, it's not as important to use an iron. Okay, so now here's the next one. I've got it ready to go, where it is going to be covered up. And I'm going to stitch between now the 2 and the 3, just like you said before.
Louise, do some papers hold up better than others?
Yes. Most of the time, if you use a tearaway stabilizer, that works well. But I've also done it with just typing paper when I ran out of other stuff to work with. Okay. Now again, this would be folded back, but you want to be sure to always trim your seam allowance. And in a second, I'll show you what happens if you don't trim your seam allowance.
I can't wait.
Okay. So now I've got this piece that has several things already stitched down. And you can see that the flower is taking shape. And again, before you go to stitch the next one, you need to be sure to trim that seam allowance nice and good. Okay, I've got one last piece that, like I was telling you, if you don't trim your seam allowance, what's going to happen is it's going to show up underneath. You can see how I didn't trim it very well, so that this is sometimes will show up underneath. And also, I didn't use an iron, and some of my seams are not really nice and flat. Okay, after you finish with it, all your pieces, you would cut on the line, and that would give you your finished paper piecing.
Oh, Louise, thank you so much for being here today and sharing that with us. And I thought you would really enjoy that technique as much as I did. Now we have one of the most adorable little girls' dresses that we've ever had on any of the shows. It is so colorful and wonderful, and it's called Butterflies and Rainbows. I have been so excited about showing you this dress. I'm going to start immediately because it has absolutely wonderful tricks for you on it. Now the collar, as you can see, just lots of pretty colors. This is called gimp work, and it has every color in the rainbow. Now I want you to look at this beautiful piping with the purple and the turquoise and the yellow and the orange. I'm going to show you how to do that in a few minutes. Then look how fun this dress is with all of the colors at the waistline, the little princess line, and more of the zigzagging over the gimp cord on the skirt. This, by the way, is called gimp work. And look at the piping. Once again, pink and purple and blue and yellow, and then the paper piecing butterflies. By the way, this dress is done on a lovely linen and cotton blend. Okay, hang in here with me. I'll show you how to do all of those techniques. First of all, we cut our paper pattern again for our paper piecing. Then, remember, that's on the right side. Flip it over to the back. See, the back is back here. Then get 2 pieces of fabric, right sides to right sides. Flip it to the back, sew from here to here, turn it back, and turn it open. That's piece number 1. Repeat that again with the next one. Fabrics are right sides to right sides. Flip it to the back, straight stitch from here to here, come back, open it up again. The next step, just go 1 step at a time, right sides to right sides, take it to the back, straight stitch it, flip it up, and here is that beautiful butterfly. Now remember I showed you that unbelievably beautiful piping? Here's all you do to make it. You take a strip of purple, turquoise, yellow, orange, and pink, or whatever colors you would like to do. Just sew them together straight. Just sew them all together and then cut bias strips and make your piping, and that is how this exquisite piping is made with all the different colors on this absolutely beautiful dress. Now, gimp work is something that is really pretty and a lot of fun also. To make the collar, you first of all are going to have to trace off your lines, your grids, and be sure you use a pattern to see how big a piece you're going to need to make. See, I'm going to make a square. Then here is gimp cord, and you use a piping foot, and or if you don't have a piping foot, just hang on to it. Then here's your gimp cord, and you come along here and zigzag one color at a time, a real heavy zigzag. You go all in one direction and then come in the other direction. Now, after you make your piping, make tiny piping covering the gimp, come in and clip. Here, I've started my clipping right here. Come in here and clip real closely because that tiny piping is going to have to turn. Then pin it on the inside of the collar after you've put all your colors down on the inside of the collar, and now you're ready to line this collar. Okay, after you put your lining on your collar, in other words, you sew it together. I have my piping in there, and you'll sew your little, it almost looks like a heart collar, doesn't it? Around here, so you've lined it. Then I'm going to come in and clip the curves, trim it away, and of course at that point I'm going to turn it right side out. I'll just turn part of it for you. Turn it right side out. You can see you've got your piping that comes around there, and then you take your beautiful gathered lace and simply butt it up to that piping and zigzag it on. And now I have a paper piecing home decorating project for you. This watermelon pot holder would be a wonderful gift for anybody on your list. And you know what? I probably need to make a few of these to go in my own kitchen. It is so adorable. It is paper piecing, and it has a little watermelon slice in the middle, surrounded by muslin, and look at the little watermelon fabric around it. And then, of course, it has a really pretty binding. How do we make this? You know it's easy. First of all, I trace off my template, which has the watermelon design, and I put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I've also put the colors. 8 is white, 3 is green, so I know exactly where they're supposed to be. Now I'm going to trace them onto my paper that I'm going to use to stitch on. Now let me flip this paper over. The first one, which was supposed to be red, is I've used red fabric, I've stitched it, I folded it back. Then the next one was green, I did the same thing. This one was green, I placed it on, came over to the outside, stitched, came back, folded it back. And this last one is ready to go now. Stitch it and fold it back. Okay, that's how the paper piecing is done. Now then, let's go ahead, and after we've made the paper piece part, let's put our sashings on this pot holder. I'm going to sew a straight stitch using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. I'm going to pull the pins out rather than sew over them. I can remember my mama fussing at me when I was a little girl saying, don't sew over those pins. So I'm going to have to tell myself the same thing, don't sew over the pins. Now then, I'm going to go ahead and finish my sashing. Here we go. All right, that's all finished, so the sashing is ready to go. And I'm now ready to finish the pot holder. I have a batting and then a piece of the green watermelon fabric on the back, and I'm going to open up my sashing after I trim the seams. This one is all ready to go now. Uh-oh, upside down. I have it all ready to stitch, and then I'm going to take my piece of fabric, hang on, I've got it folded in two, that is going to be my binding. I'll take my piece of fabric, pin it all the way around, stitch 1/4 inch seam allowance, and then since this already has a folded edge, that's going to be my binding. I will bring it around to the back, and then I will stitch in the ditch along here through all the layers. The quilting, quote unquote, is done by just simply, after the whole thing is finished, straight stitching around in this ditch right here, and that is really all the quilting there is to it. Let me flip it over to the back. See, the only place that all of these layers are sewn together is right along that square. And then will also be sewn together after I do my binding and flip it to the back. I will stitch in the ditch to hold the binding. Next, I have a beautiful quilt square for you with also some Seminole patchwork. This beautiful quilt will be presented throughout the whole series. I just love it. It's made of blue and white Swiss batiste with beautiful French laces. And the square we're going to do today, which is the first one for me to present to you, is Seminole patchwork. A very beautiful technique out of Swiss batiste and lace, and a very unusual one, I think. Starting with strips of blue Swiss batiste, 2 strips of white French lace insertion. Bring the insertion over a little bit onto the batiste, just like I've done here. Bring the insertion over and simply zigzag it down. That's step number 1. Then, here's the piece I just made. I'm going to have 2 more strips of blue batiste, this time lighter colored, and I'm going to bring the strip I just made over onto the next strip and zigzag it. And over here, as you can see, I've already done that. Next, measure the pieces and trace the lines, cutting 3 little slices 3 little pieces rather than 1 slice. Trace it, and you've got a bunch of little pieces now. The next step is to bring these pieces over. Now see, this is 1 piece right here that's stitched together. Bring this piece over and move it up 1 square where it's kind of like a checkerboard. Light blue, dark blue, light blue, and stitch it together. Then put the next piece. Then bring the next piece, match it light blue, dark blue, straight, just zigzag it down, and then bring the next piece and zigzag it down, and the little piece looks like that. Okay, turn it up like so. Get your little rotary cutter. I used to call them roller blades. They're trying to teach me don't call it roller blades, but it looks like a roller blade to me. And get your clear quilter's ruler and find out where to cut it. And then just simply, I can't cut it on this board, but simply slice up there. And after you slice both sides, then you have a piece that looks like that. I guess I better put this little blade back in, hadn't I? Okay, I'm just going to put it right down there. Now, after you get your piece, we're going to next you've got to put the rest of the square on. So I'll bring another strip of little blue fabric, attach a piece of lace simply by putting it on top and zigzagging it, and then bringing it over the rest of the part of the square, simply laying it over and zigzagging it. Do that on both sides, and then trim away from behind the laces, and you have that beautiful square that was on the quilt. Now, since this is lace that you're going to be able to see through, when you're making lace squares for a quilt, it will be necessary to line it with the white. Otherwise, you can see right through to the batting. Now, that square is ready to go on this beautiful quilt. That's square number 1, and we'll share some other squares with you a little bit later. Now, I would like to invite you to come up to my attic and see a magnificent antique garment. My dress today, or rather my overdress today, I call the 1920s overdress. Before I show you the dress, I'd like to tell you a little story about the 1920s. Women, for the first time in many years, began to cut their hair short. They had that 1920s bob, and actually the one who started that fad, which really has not given up yet, has I guess a century later, was Irene Castle. She and her husband, Mr. Castle, were ballroom dancers, and everyone loved to watch them dance. And she was the first woman to cut her hair and wear a short bob, the 1920s bob. Now the dress is also shorter than a lot of my clothes because women also shortened their skirts after World War I. This dress has fascinating details. I love the way there's a little crocheted piece that has been inserted on each side of the collar. And this front panel is fabulous. It has some faggoting, and then it has insertion, a gathered lace edging, but look underneath here. There is a piece of gathered puffing, and you know what? It's almost pleated puffing. That's very interesting. A piece of insertion, another piece of gathered edging, and another piece of that pleated puffing, and that goes all the way down the front of this panel. Now, don't think that this is a risque dress because it ends there. This was an overdress, which would have been worn over a slip, a full slip, which would have had a pretty camisole type top, and then a very beautiful skirt, and this would have just come on the outside. You notice how short it is? Let me turn this around to the back. It really was beautiful in the back also. It has the French insertion that comes down and is mitered and then goes across. Another piece of French insertion comes down, is mitered and goes across, and then a piece of French insertion joins the skirt of this overdress to the dress. Now the sleeve is really beautiful also. It has faggoting, French insertion, and gathered French edging. Indeed, this was a new look for women who were not going to dress or have their hair the way they had for many years. I hope you've had as much fun in my sewing room today as I have, and I really hope that you will join us next time.